Welcome to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. I'm Joel Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
This show features questions from the Personality Hacker community that we answer in about 10 minutes. We've been using personality types in our coaching for years, and we'd love to answer your questions about personal growth through the lens of type. You can find out more about us at personalityhacker.com. Okay, now let's hear today's question.
Hi, Joel and Antonia. My name is Jen, and I'm an ENFP from Perth, Australia. My question is that if it's possible for an ENFP to develop the skill to shut off their emotions in the moment and focus objectively on the task on hand, and then when they have a safe space or at night, they can bring it back up and internalize it and deal with it. I personally find it really hard and impossible to do so. I'd like to process them in the moment and be at peace with it before being able to focus. But I notice that other people can just shut it off easier and deal with things, especially with work. Are all feelers like that? And if so, are there any tips to help shut that emotion off, which usually comes in the form of anxiety or overwhelm?
Thanks, Jen, for the question. So this is a little bit of a complex question and a complex answer. So we're going to do our best to...
Keep it in 10 minutes.
Yeah, keep it 10 minutes. But let me just recontextualize your question to basically ask, can an ENFP shut off emotions and process them later when something needs to get done?
Yeah. So this is a whole ball of wax for you, Joel.
It is.
I think this is there's a lot to this particular question.
Yeah.
It's very personal to you, actually, as a fellow ENFP.
Yeah, and so I would immediately say there's a mass distinction between needing to be validated for an emotion or a perspective and needing to process an emotion you're feeling. And I think ENFPs often conflate this. I know I do. And what ends up happening in a work, and this is, I think, Jen, you frame this in a work scenario. So when something needs to get done or an output needs to happen, what ends up happening is you have like your information comes through your feelings and your emotions, right? As an ENFP, that's the best thinking is through emotional experience. Like you're going to experience emotions as you're trying to do something, and you know how you feel about things, you know what the right action is, you know what the right decisions are based on how you feel about it. It's very internal and subjective. And what ends up happening as ENFPs is we look to the outer world. I have ENFP preferences as well. Look to the outer world to validate that we're feeling this right. Like, okay, I think this needs to happen. We need to go and launch this. Let's say it's a marketing campaign. We need to do this. I feel like this is the right action to take. But again, that feeling is very internal and subjective. So you go to your external world, your business environment, maybe your coworkers, and you attempt to get some validation for how you're feeling about the right decision. If you don't get that validation, or if it's not the exact validation you think you need or you wanted, now I think emotions come in. There's other emotions now enter of like, wait, maybe I'm like, you're uncertain. Like maybe that wasn't a good feeling I had toward that thing. Or maybe that is a bad choice because no one else is validating. Maybe I don't have the right end of it. Because again, it's your internal subjective experience. And other people might be measuring it on external markers, like what works or what gets the job done or what builds something.
So I have a distinction question here, which is, are you seeking validation for the feeling or are you seeking validation for the feeling's relevance in a business context?
Sometimes both. That's why it's so difficult and nuanced.
Because I would think that introverted feeling or authenticity as your co-pilot or parental function, that you wouldn't need other people in order to feel a sense of certainty around it.
Well, if you're trying to not in the way you want to act or move, but you don't know if the way you want to act or move is actually going to deliver the result in the business environment that is needed.
Exactly, the impact, right?
That's right. You don't know what the impact will be. So you're a little bit, once you tether impact to it, now there's uncertainty.
Right, because I was going to say with introverted feeling, you don't need anybody's validation for what you're feeling or whether or not it's a valid feeling inside of you.
Only when it's related to an external marker or goal.
Exactly. The uncertainty comes when now it's making an impact with extroverted thinking or effectiveness. And that's actually the thing that you need some validation around, right? Because that's the uncertain piece. Is it okay for me to bring this emotion to this context, or is this going to have the impact that we want it to have.
Well, and most times it's not experienced as emotion with people. It's not like you're being emotional. You're not crying your way through your decision making toward this project goal in a business meeting. You're often just tuning into how you feel about it, and you're trusting the feeling of the information that's coming through your feelings more than the information maybe from your brain or from other criteria. Like, you're going to really trust that. But then when other people don't necessarily reflect that back to you as an ENFP, you're like, well, you should kind of be feeling the same way, coworker of mine, or you should kind of be, having the same informational, the information should be coming through feeling for you too. Tell me that I'm seeing this right based on my internal emotional criteria. And again, it doesn't have to be expressed feeling. It could be very deep and just a sense of knowing. That's usually how an ENFP will feel it. But the moment that stops to be validated, or you can't get the validation, now you do have emotions, I think, that enter the scene that you do have to process. That's where the problem comes. Now you start to, it's messy. Now it's no longer about the information around the decision you're trying to make in the work environment, let's say. Now there's a bunch of other things like, oh, they think I'm stupid. Oh, maybe I'm silly. Oh, maybe I don't have the right thing of this. Maybe I'm a bad leader. Maybe I'm a bad business person. Like self-doubt, like all the other emotions flood in, and it dirties the water. It's really messy really quick. And so now you lose track of, okay, what information can I trust or not? Because I didn't get the validation I need. Now I've got all this emotion to process through before I can even get to what the information was of what the right action is. Yeah. And if the question is, can I delay processing all that till later? Yes. That's what introverted feeling authenticity can do. It can capture emotion, it can time bind it, and it can deal with it not in real time. It can deal with it asynchronously. That's the beauty of this function. So absolutely, if that's just the question fundamentally for an ENFP, do I have the ability to capture the emotions I'm feeling and then process them later? Yes. Now, that's not necessarily going to get you the validation you want in the moment or get the project done or anything.
Yeah.
It gets really messy really quick. So I have the answer to this, by the way.
Okay. I was just going to say, can I make sure that I understand what you're saying? So what I'm hearing you say is that introverted feeling or authenticity, a feature of it is that it doesn't have to process things immediately. That's right. A feature of it is that it can process things later. It's a post-processing experience. So if you have feelings, you can, you can time bind them, right? We talk about art time binding expression and feelings and that sort of thing. So absolutely the function can. But when EFPs feel overwhelm, it's not because the emotion must be processed right now. It's what I'm hearing you say is that they actually might be experiencing anxiety, stress, overwhelm, not because they have a feeling that is, banging on the door to be processed. It's actually uncertainty in their extroverted thinking or effectiveness that's causing the chaos. It's actually uncertainty and insecurity. And then that because it's not in a strength, not in their introverted feeling, it's almost like the thing that's causing the overwhelm and the stress and the anxiety is that there's a childlike part of you that's seeking validation. Yeah. Like it's uncertain, and that's the thing that needs to be attended to.
Well, and to make matters worse or more challenging, extroverted thinking or effectiveness, the 10-year-old or tertiary process for ENFPs, for all EFPs, but in this case, ENFP, it thinks sequentially on a timeline in the external world. So when you have all these emotions that come up in that environment and you're in a work environment with a project goal that you need to hit, you're more in the energy of that part of yourself, that extroverted thinking, sequential energy. And so the question comes up, well, do I need to process this emotion before I can do the next action? Because you're thinking sequentially. You're not thinking asynchronously like introverted feeling would.
And there might be an assumption, I need to get this part of me approved of, validated before I can move on to the next task.
To the next action, because that's how extroverted thinking or effectiveness, that's how it processes inside of you. It thinks in a linear fashion.
Right. It assumes one thing has to happen before another thing can happen.
So it's like you might tell yourself well, I can't wait till tonight. I have to take action C. I just took action B that made me feel all these emotions, and I need to take action C to get this project done, but I can't take action C until I resolve all of action B. So I got to process all these emotions right now, and then you extrovert the emotions maybe, or you have to take time right then to go quote unquote process them, and you're delaying things. Maybe your coworker's like, why is this person emotional? This happened to me, by the way. This is personal. Why is this person, emotional right now? There's no emotion in math or engineering. What's going on here? It's because the belief is, and it's coming from the 10-year-old or tertiary, the belief is that you have to process the emotions when you feel them in the sequence in order to get the project done, just like projects happen. But you don't. You don't have to. And so two levers here. One is you can develop the skill of self-validation. So when you have that information come through your emotions during projects or work modes, you don't necessarily have to have others validate that. You can validate that for yourself. That's a skill you can build in introverted feeling or authenticity. And the second thing is you have to realize just because you think the emotions have to happen in sequence for this project, they don't necessarily. Introverted feeling or authenticity, the part of you that understands emotions, captures them and processes them later, that part of you, the adult part of you, the more sophisticated part of you, can go ahead and process these later off of the timeline. You don't have to believe the 10-year-old part of you that tells you, no, they have to be processed right now. There's a sense of urgency. We can't do the next thing until this is resolved. We must resolve this conflict or this feeling or this validation. I won't let you do the next step until this is resolved. And that's the lie that comes from your 10-year-old part of yourself.
Yeah, I had to giggle there because what you're saying has so much delightful truth to it. I'm like, as you're talking, I'm just like, I'm kind of almost laughing at the satisfaction I'm getting from hearing you say something so true. I'm like, that's exactly how that works. Well, I just wanted to make sure, like, I didn't get a salty comment later, like, Antonia's laughing at Joel. And I'm like, no, I'm like, actually.
No, she's laughing at all ENFPs.
No.
She's ridiculing all of us.
Oh, stop. It's
maniacally.
Yeah, mwahaha. No, it's just like, no, that's totally true. What a great way of expressing that. So I just wanted to make it clear. But the two things that came up for me is first, there's a trust. I think trust has to be established with oneself when you're an EFP that you will post game it.
Yeah.
Because once you're out of the energy of the emotion and maybe you just forced yourself to get into action, later on, you're not going to feel it as strongly. Yeah. In fact, you might even go, oh, well, the task is done, so I actually don't feel that anymore. So I think the reason why sometimes for EFPs, their internal wisdom is trying to say, no, you have to do this right this second.
Let's force it.
Let's force it right now is because it doesn't trust that you'll do it later, that it'll get stuck in there.
Well, and you often won't. That's true.
Exactly.
It is a challenge to revisit it because it probably didn't feel that great.
So I say the tip, quote unquote, is make a commitment to yourself that you will post game it. Make a commitment to yourself that you will post-process it, and then you watch yourself do that enough so that your internal mechanism doesn't try to frontline it. It doesn't try to force it to the front, going, no, you need to do this right now because I know you and you're not going to do it later. Like, go, no, I'm responsible enough. I am going to do it later. And then now you can, my assumption is that it's easier to let it go in the moment with full trust in the self that you'll revisit it later when you have a safe space.
And here's the final tip. This is free. You can take it. You don't have to pay for this one. Basically, have a hygiene around this. I mean, the best way to make sure this happens is every day you're always processing emotion. You have a habit of it or a practice of it. So one of the practices I have is emotional scans. I sit down, I scan my body, I scan my emotions, and I scan my thoughts, and then I scan all three combined. And I have like a practice I do. I have a tapping process where I process emotions daily. I have an EPR, emotional process and release practice that I do. And I do it both proactively and responsively, meaning I do it with like themes of safety, control, and appreciation. Like I need those things, so I let those go. Like I don't need the feeling of safety or appreciation or control. That's like proactive. And then responsively, when certain strong emotions come, I can also process those because I've practiced proactively letting things go. And there's a whole breath work, discipline, meditation, like it's a whole thing.
Yes, that was actually the second thing I was going to say. Oh. I'm so glad you mentioned it.
Well, I jumped the gun there.
That's okay. The second thing I was going to say is have a practice, right? Like, don't just trust that you'll post game it later, but have something that allows you in the moment to not fully process the emotions, but get yourself to a place of like you've Aikido your emotions in the moment. You've got like an energy release practice so that you can release the energy that feels pent up, and then trust that later you'll revisit it and complete the process. So yeah, those are great.
Thanks, Jen, for the question. You can ask your own question about personality types or personal growth. Visit personalityhacker.com/questions. We also have programs designed to help you with your personal growth through the lens of personality types. Again, visit personalityhacker.com and find the program that's made just for you. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Thank you for listening to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. We'll talk with you on the next episode. Hey, it's Joel from Personality Hacker. So a big reason people get into personality types is usually to improve their relationships with other people. And you can understand key differences between you and someone else when you understand how type works. So clearly, personality type is applied to relationships. But what about the relationship with yourself? Well, personality type can also help you navigate your career, or maybe an educational path that you need to follow, or other opportunities that present themselves, and it helps you know which are the right choice for you. And ultimately, personality is the key to unlocking identity-level worldview and life purpose. It all starts with getting the owner's manual for your personality type. In this owner's manual, we cover the basics of your personality. And then we dive a layer deeper to connect your personality to your relationships, your career, your worldview, and identity. Because we believe it's your life, and it should be designed for your personality. So start your owner's manual journey at personalityhacker.com. When you access your owner's manual, I recommend focusing on the ideal day exercise first. Because when you start crafting your ideal day, you're being mindful about the type of lifestyle that you want. So designing a life around how you're naturally wired makes sense, and you can finally stop fighting yourself. So come discover and develop your unique personality at personalityhacker.com.